Then Jerubbaal, that is, Gideon, and all the people with him got up early and set camp by En Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them by Givat Moreh in the valley. Adonai said to Gideon, "There are too many people with you for me to hand Midian over to them, because I don't want Israel to be able to boast against me. We saved ourselves by our own strength. Therefore proclaim to the people, anyone who is anxious or afraid should go back home, while we stay here on Mount Gilead." 22,000 returned, but 10,000 remained. Adonai said to Gideon, "There are still too many people. Have them come down to the water, and there I will screen them for you. If I say of anyone, this one is for you, he is to go with you, and if I say, this one is not for you, he won't go with you." So he brought the people down to the water, and Adonai said to Gideon, "Put to one side everyone who laps up the water with his tongue, the way a dog does, and put to the other side everyone who gets down on his knees to drink." 300 lapped, putting their hand to their mouth. All the rest of the men got down on their knees to drink water. Adonai said to Gideon, "I will use these 300 men who lap the water to save you. I will hand Midian over to you. Let all these others go back home." So they took the provisions and the shofars of the people. Then he sent all the men of Israel away, each to his tent. But the 300 men he kept. The camp of Midian was in the valley below him. That night Adonai said to him, "Get up and attack the camp, because I have handed it over to you. But if you are afraid to attack, go down with your servant Purah. And after you hear what you are saying, you will have the courage to attack the camp." So with his servant Purah, he went down to the outpost of the camp. Now Midian, Elimelech, and all the others from the east had settled in the valley as thick as locusts. Their camels were beyond counting, like the sand of the seashore. Gideon got there just as a man was telling a comrade about a dream he had. "I just now dreamt that a loaf of barley bread fell into the camp of Midian, came to the tent, and struck it so hard that it overtook the tent and knocked it flat." His comrade answered, "This can only be the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. God has given Midian and all its army into his hands." Then Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation. He fell on his knees in worship. Then he returned to the camp of Israel and said, "Get up, because Adonai has handed Midian's army over to us." He divided the 300 men into 3 companies. He put his hands on all of them. He put in the hands of all of them shofars and empty pitchers with torches in them. Then he said to them, "Watch me and do what I do. When I get to the edge of the camp, whatever I do, you do the same. When I and everyone with me blow the shofar, then you blow your shofars all around the whole camp and shout, 'For Adonai and for Gideon!'" Gideon and 100 men with him arrived at the edge of the camp a little before midnight, just after they had changed the guard. They blew the shofars and broke in pieces the pitchers that were in their hands. All 3 companies blew the shofars, broke the pitchers, and held the torches in their left hands, keeping their right hands free with the shofars. They were blowing, and they shouted, "The sword of Adonai and for Gideon!" Then as every man stood still in the place around the camp, the whole camp was thrown into panic. With everyone screaming and trying to escape, Gideon's men blew their 300 shofars, and Adonai caused everyone in the camp to attack his comrades, and the enemy fled beyond Beit Shitti near Zerah, as far as the border as Evel Mechalah by Tabat. Then men of Israel were summoned from Naphtali, Asher, and both regions of Manasseh, and they pursued Midian. Gideon sent messengers through all the hills of Ephraim with this message: "Come down and attack Midian and capture the rivers before they get there, as far as Beeth Barah and also the Yarden." So all the men of Ephraim came together and seized the rivers as far as Beeth Barah and the Yarden. They also captured 2 chiefs of Midian, Orev and Zeev. They put Orev to death at the rock of Orev and Zeev at the Zeev's winepress. Then, as they kept pursuing Midian, they brought the heads of Orev and Zeev to Gideon, who had crossed to the far side of the Yarden. But the men of Ephraim complained to Gideon, "Why didn't you call on us when you were to fight Midian? Why did you treat us this way?" They were sharp in their criticism. He answered them by saying, How can what I have done be compared with what you have done? Aren't the grapes of Ephraim, leaves on the vines, better than the ones Evel harvests? God handed over to you Midian's chiefs, Orev and Zeev. What could I do that matches what you did? By saying that, he appeased their anger at him. By now, Gideon and his 300 men had come to the Yarden and crossed over. They were exhausted, but were still pursuing the enemy. In Sukkot, he asked the people there, "Please give me loaves of bread to the men following me, because they are exhausted, and I am pursuing Zavach and Zalmunna, the king of Midian." But the chiefs of Sukkot said, "You haven't captured Zavach and Zalmunna yet, so why would we give you bread and your army?" Gideon said, "If that's your answer, then after Adonai has put Zavach and Zalmunna in my hands, I will tear your flesh apart with desert thorns and thistles." From there he went up to Penuel and made the same request, and the people of Penuel gave the same answer as those of Sukkot. So he answered the people of Penuel similarly, "When I return safe and sound, I will break down this tower." Now Zavach and Zalmunna were in Karkor with their army, about 15,000 men, all that remained of the entire army of the people of the east, since 120,000 arm-bearing soldiers had fallen. Gideon went up, using the route of the nomads east of Novach and Yagbaha, and struck down the army when they thought they were safe. Zavach and Zalmunna fled, but Gideon pursued them. Thus he captured the 2 kings of Midian, Zavach and Zalmunna, and routed their whole army in panic. When Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from the battle by the way of Heres Pass, he captured the young men from Sukkot and asked him about the chiefs and leaders of Sukkot. He wrote down for him the names of 77 of them. Then he came to the people of Sukkot and said, "You insulted me with what you said. You haven't captured Zavach and Zalmunna yet. So why should we give bread to your exhausted men? Well, here are Zavach and Zalmunna." And he took the leaders of the city and desert thorns and thistles and used them to teach the people of Sukkot a lesson. He also broke down the tower of Penuel and put the men of the city to death. Then he said to Zavach and Zalmunna, "Tell me about the men you killed in Tabor." They answered, "They look like you, like a king's son." Gideon replied, "They were my brothers and my mother's sons. As surely as Adonai is alive, I swear that if you had spared them, I would not kill you." Then he ordered his oldest son, Yetir, "Get up and kill them." But the boy didn't draw his sword. Being still a boy, he was afraid. Then Zavach and Zalmunna said, "You do it. You kill us. Let a grown man do what it takes, a grown man's strength." So Gideon got up and killed Zavach and Zalmunna. Then he took the ornamental crescents from around their camels' necks. The men of Israel said to Gideon, "Rule over us, you, your son, and your grandson, because you saved us from the power of Midian." Gideon replied, "Neither I nor my son will rule over you. Adonai will rule over you." Then he added, "But I have this request to make of you, that each of you would give me the earrings of the booty you have taken. For the enemy's soldiers have worn gold earrings, like all the tribes of descendants of Ishmael." They replied, "We're glad to give them to you." They spread out a robe, and each man threw in the earrings from his booty. The gold earrings he requested weighed more than 42 pounds. And this doesn't include the crescents, pendants, and purple cloth worn by the kings of Midian, the chains around their camels' necks. Out of these, Gideon made a ritual vest, which he located in the city of Ophrah. But all Israel turned into an idol there, and it thus became a snare to Gideon and his family. This is how Midian was defeated by Israel, so that they ceased to be a threat. The land had rest for 40 years during the lifetime of Gideon. Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, returned to his home to stay there. Gideon became the father of 70 sons, because he had many wives. He also had a concubine, Shechem. She too bore him a son, called him Avimelech. Gideon, the son of Joash, died at a ripe old age and was buried in the tomb of his father Joash in Ophrah of the Avaziri. But as soon as Gideon was dead, the people of Israel again went astray after the Balaam and made a Baal Brit their god. They forgot Adonai their God, who had saved them from the power of all their enemies on every side. And they showed no kindness toward the family of Jerubbaal, that is, Gideon, to repay him from all this good that he had done for Israel. Avimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem, to his mother's brother, and spoke with them and with the whole clan of his maternal godfather. He said, "Please, ask all the men of Shechem, which is better for you, that all 70 of your sons, Jerubbaal, rule over you, or that one person rule over you? And remember that I am your blood relative." His mother's brother spoke to all the men of Shechem and said to all of them about him. So they followed their feelings and supported Avimelech, arguing, "After all, he's our brother." They also gave him 70 pieces of silver from the temple of Baal Brit, and he used these to pay good-for-nothing thugs to follow him. He went back to his father's house in Ophrah and killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, all 70 of them, on a single rock, except for Yotam, Jerubbaal's youngest son, who stayed alive because he hid himself. All the men of Shechem and all Beit Milo got together and went and made Avimelech king of the oak by the colt pillar in Shechem. When they told us about Yotam, he went and stood on top of Mount Gerizim and shouted, "Listen to me, you leader of Shechem. Then God will listen to you." Once the trees went out to choose a king to rule them, they said to the olive tree, "Rule over us." But the olive tree replied, "I am supposed to leave my oil, which is used to honor both God and humanity, just to go and hold sway over the trees?" So the trees said to the fig tree, "You, come rule over us." But the fig tree replied, "Am I supposed to leave my sweetness and my good fruit just to go over and hold sway over the trees?" So the trees said to the grapevine, "You, come rule over us." But the grapevine replied, "Am I supposed to leave my vine, which gives cheer to God and humanity, just to go and hold sway over the trees?" Finally, all the trees said to the thorn bush, "You, come rule over us." The thorn bush replied, "If you really make me king over you, then come and take shelter in my shade. But if not, let fire come out from the thorn bush and burn down the cedars of the Lebanon." Here's the point. Have you been honest and straightforward in making Avimelech king? Have you been fair with Jerubbaal and his household and treated him as he deserves? My father fought on your behalf, risking his life, rescued from the power of Midian. Now you are rebelling against my father's household? You killed his 70 sons in a single stone and made Avimelech, the son of a slave girl, king of the men of Shechem, because he's your brother? I say this: if you are dealing honestly and righteously with Jerubbaal and his household today, then may you enjoy Avimelech, and may he enjoy you. But if not, Let fire come out from Abimelech and burn up the men of Shechem and Beth Millo. And let fire come out from the men of Shechem and Beth Millo and burn up Abimelech. Then Jotam fled, making his way to Beer, and he lived there for fear of Abimelech his brother. Abimelech was chief over Israel for 3 years, but God sent a spirit of discord between Abimelech and the son of Shechem, so that the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. This came about so that the crime against the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might be avenged and the responsibility for their blood death be placed on Abimelech, their brother, who murdered them, and on the men of Shechem, who helped him kill his brothers. So the men of Shechem sent out men to ambush him on the mountaintops. They robbed everyone who went past them, and Abimelech was told about it. Gaal, the son of a slave, came with his brothers and went on to Shechem. And the men of Shechem put their trust in him. They went out into the field, gathered their grapes, and pressed the juice out of them. Then they held a feast and went into the house of their God to eat and drink. And there they insulted Abimelech. Gaal, the son of a slave, said, "Who is Abimelech? Think of the contrast with Shechem. Why should we serve Abimelech? Isn't he the son of Jerubbaal? Isn't Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem. Why should we serve Abimelech? If I were in control of this people, I'd get rid of Abimelech." Then, addressing his words to Abimelech, he said, "Come out and fight. I don't care if you make your army even larger." When Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of the slave, he was enraged. He sent messengers to Abimelech in Torma with this message: "Gaal, the son of a slave, and his brothers have come to Shechem, and they're inciting the city against you. You and the men with you should come up now and at night and lie in wait in the field. In the morning, get up early as soon as the sun rises and attack the city. Then, when Gaal and the men will come up out to fight you, do whatever you can to them." Abimelech and all his men came up by night and lay in wait against Shechem in 4 groups. Gaal, the son of a slave, went out and stationed himself at the entrance of the city gate. Then Abimelech and his men rose from their ambush. When Gaal saw the men, he said to Zebul, "Look, there are men coming down from the mountaintops." Zebul answered, "You are seeing the shadows of mountains as if they were men." Gaal said again, "Look, there are men coming down from the main hill in the land, and one group is coming on the road from the fortune teller's oak." Zebul said to him, "Where's your mouth now? You said, 'Who is Abimelech? Why should we serve him? Aren't these the people you despise? Go on out and fight them." So Gaal went out, leading the men of Shechem, and fought Abimelech. But Abimelech gave chase, and Gaal took fight. Many fell wounded, strewn all the way to the city gate. When Abimelech took up residence in Arumah, and Zebul drove out Gaal and his brothers so that they could not live in Shechem. But the very next day the people went out into the field, and Abimelech was told about it. He took his men, divided them into 3 groups, and lay in wait in the field. When he saw that the people going out of the city, he came out of hiding and slaughtered them. Abimelech and his people rushed forward and occupied the entrance of the city gate, while the other 2 groups attacked all those in the field and killed them. Abimelech fought against the city all that day, captured it, killed its people, destroyed its building, and sowed its land with salt. When all the men of the fortress of Shechem heard about this, they took refuge in the stronghold of the temple in El-Brit. Abimelech was told about all the men from Shechem fortress had gathered together. So he led all his men up to Mount Zelaman, where he took an axe in his hand, cut a branch off a tree, and laid it on his shoulder. Then he said to those with him, "Quick, do what you just saw me do." They all did likewise, each man cutting off his branch, and they followed Abimelech. They put the branches up against the stronghold, set them on fire, and burned down the stronghold, so that all the people from Shechem fortress died, about 1,000 men and women. When Abimelech went to Zevetz, set up camp against Zevetz, and captured it, but there was a fortress tower inside the city, and all the men and the women took refuge in it, everyone in the city. They shut themselves inside and went into the roof of the tower. However, when Abimelech approached the tower, attacked it, and then came up close to the tower's door in order to burn it down. A woman dropped an upper millstone on Abimelech's head, cracking his skull. He quickly called out to the young man holding his armor, "Draw your sword to finish me off, so the people won't say a woman killed me." So his attendant ran through him, and he died. When all the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they all went back home. This is how God paid back Abimelech for the wrong he did to his father in murdering his 70 brothers. God also repaid the men of Shechem for all the wrong they had done. On them came the curse of Yotam, the son of Jerubbaal.